Having a conversation around mental health and mental illness is never easy, especially when we see that somebody we care very deeply about is going through something difficult, whether it be the high stress that comes with life on the farm, financial burdens and constant uncertainties, or the increased susceptibility to developing mental health problems as a result. When it comes to having potentially difficult conversations with our families, friends, and community members, it's important to consider a few key principles that will empower you in these emotionally charged situations. It starts by initiating the conversation. If you see that someone is struggling, or you notice a shift in their behavior, take it upon yourself to let them know that you've noticed this shift or change. And when you do, it's important to bring in fact-based, noticeable observations into the conversation. Hey Sam, you normally join us every Sunday for coffee, but the last few weeks you've declined our invite as well as some of your community work. Is everything okay? Bringing in noticeable observations as opposed to perceptions, attitudes, judgments, or our beliefs will at the very least show the person that you're paying attention and have noticed that something might be going on. Another consideration for initiating the conversation is to do so in a way that invites open dialogue instead of one-word closed dialogue. For example, asking the question, "Is something wrong?" is more likely to generate a yes, no, or a shrug of the shoulders response compared to, "I've noticed that you've been coming to bed after 1 in the morning the last week. How have you been feeling?" Prompting for detail and additional context is a great way to initiate an open and meaningful conversation. Next, listen. You don't need to be an expert in mental health or a licensed physician to give someone the gift of a safe platform. It's important to remember that someone who is experiencing a mental health concern might bring in some doubts into the conversation. Can they trust you? Who will you tell? What will the implications be if they share something personal with you? This is where the skill of listening truly becomes critical. Listening with the intent to understand is very different from listening with the intent to respond. Naturally, when someone is willing to share something difficult with us, we sometimes feel like we need to have an answer or some incredible piece of wisdom. But realistically, to support someone is more about listening without judgment, without minimizing their experiences, and without feeling like you must respond. Listening with the intent to understand means that you are okay with silence and possibly the awkwardness of the situation. Next, it's time to engage in solution-focused dialogue. This means being intentional with, where do we go from here? Or what can I do to support you? With this important step, the most critical element is that we allow the individual to make the recommendation or share their ideas first. We may not be able to fully accommodate or support what they're asking, but allowing our loved ones, team members, or employees to initially dictate and choose the best course of action further demonstrates our desire to listen with that intent to understand. Lastly comes accountability. Understanding that these often difficult conversations are never one and done, it's important to wrap up with a commitment to a follow-up conversation. The follow-up conversation can be as formal or informal as needed. In some cases, there may be a takeaway or a task to revisit in a month, while in other cases, it might just be a simpler weekly check-in. In any event, the follow-up conversation demonstrates your accountability to and commitment to continuing the conversation as long as they are needed. For those of you who feel uncomfortable and awkward in these situations, keep in mind that every time you engage in one, like any skill, you gain confidence and competence. When it comes to having tough talks where mental health should be considered, one of the most impactful strategies to apply is something we call the rule-out rule. Before we automatically assume, perceive, or expect that the reason for the noticeable shift we see in someone are due to things like performance or motivation, we must be willing to take a step back and ask ourselves if the cause of what we're seeing is potentially due to a mental health concern. If we can do this, we are more likely to keep our conversations wrapped in empathy, and the individual knows that they will be fully supported. Thanks for watching, and take care.